Hello, good day everyone. I'm Mohammed Suhail and I own a Acer Predator Helios 300 and I have been gaming on it since past 4 years. I have come across many temperature issues which throttle my GPU as well as CPU, but even though I have repested and you have been using a cooling pad to they still exist, and I will teach you how to deal with them properly. There are many ways to deal with those. I'll I'll show you one method. MSI afterburner is one of those methods. As you can see, this is the following is for a GTX 1060 laptop, not the Max-Q, the regular GTX 1060. I'll show you how I have modified its curve depending to decrease its temperatures. The following is a curve I have set so that I get maximum performance at a very low voltage. This is the maximum megahertz it can go, and beyond that it gets power throttled. So as you can see, 1847 is the limit, and I have pushed it at a voltage of 900 millivolts. Now I have made different profiles for such curves to keep my GPU as much as cool as possible. These two are ultra low profiles which I can use to play CPU intensive games rather than GPU intensive. I know there will be a performance impact, but not as much as uh, expected. These are the performance intensive ones where the GPU is utilized completely as much as possible. This one is Max-Q profile. Usually the laptop manufacturers have been underclocking the GPUs to regulate the temperatures, and Max-Q profile is what I have enabled over here. Okay, to decide your curve, I'll show how to make a curve in MSI Afterburner. As you can see, first click on this icon over here. This menu shall open. Now I'll show you the default curve which came along with the GPU. This is the default curve. As you can see, it touches 1800 on a very high voltage, which results in more heat dissipation. And usually in stock, what happens is this later drops to a lower voltage and lower clock, which results in performance drop. Now I will show you how to manage this. It's better we don't touch the lower values right now, and let's focus on the higher values, because the clock is not going to stay over here for a long time and it's going to jump to a higher frequency. If you Google it once, you'll find out the GTX 1060 most of the time lies around at 1733 megahertz. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lock it over here. Locking means getting all the points to a same megahertz, same frequency. And even in laptops sometimes, as due to the temperature gets higher with playing games, there will be sudden changes in the clocks which results in game crashes. It's not necessary that change of clocks results in game crashes, but throttling does result in game crashing. So I suggest you do this so that your GPU lasts a longer time compared to the stock. And I suggest, I don't know why the manufacturers also do not do this by default. So here we have created this, and if we click on this, we'll get a straight line. Now we have logged our GPU at 1733 at 950 millivolts. Now what I'm gonna do is, as we know by default, this is a stable curve. We have just locked it over here. Now I'm gonna increase it with the previous values. I suggest you try around 6 to 7 values, because that's what I have seen in Pascal, is that it is able to handle it quite well. And I can assure you this is not going to damage your GPU, and it will run your GPU more efficiently, as it's going to use lower power and lower voltage. MSF Afterburner has a brilliant tool called OC Scanner. Now over here, after opening the OC Scanner, you can just test your curve. The following curve will tell you whether the curve you have made is stable or not. If it is not stable, you might have to sacrifice 1 or 2 points and increase the voltage a bit. While this is happening, I will tell you a foolproof plan, so that what if, even though still your temperature goes high and you don't know what to do, and it's constantly going high and high and high, I suggest is a application called Acer GPU Tweak. This application is very nice. I do not suggest its user-defined overclocking or manual overclocking, because in laptops usually overclocking is pretty unstable. I suggest this manual overclocking only in MS Afterburner, because it has been very stable for a very long time, which I have been using, and gives me very good performance, and has enabled me to get higher benchmark scores even than the stock performance. Over here there is an option called GPU temp target. This throttles your GPU at a particular temperature you set. This is a foolproof measure. If your GPU is attaining a certain temperature, this will throw your clocks back a bit so that it doesn't cross the particular temperature. This is a very good tool, because if CPU throttling or CPU hard throttling occurs, you will experience a very bad lag. But in a GPU, you will experience FPS drop, which will not likely experience affect your performance in the game to much of an extent. It will be around 4 to 5 PS drop, but this this is the final step and the foolproof plan which I am suggesting over here. So this you'll be able to change it once you click it. See, I suggest 85. I'm not clicking apply here because the temperature, because the test is happening in the background, and I suggest not to do that now because these two are two separate applications, and once I click apply it will go back to the stock curve profile. So I will show you once you boot up the computer. First this should run, then later MSI Afterburner should run, so that first you put the GPU temperature target first, later the curve is applied once you boot up your PC. After you get a 90% stability result, you can go ahead and try this, like extending it to a greater frequency and locking it. Okay, I'll show you. This does take a long while. In the meantime, I'll show you another method to stop CPU throttling. CPU throttling is a big issue which keeps happening in GPUs, in laptops. I have an i7 7700HQ. This gets pretty hot. For this, first I have applied an undervolt of 115 millivolts. It's better not to mess with CPU cache much, because if you undervolt this a lot, it may result in BSODs and system crashes. Okay, over here we have got the answer's confidence level is 90%. This is the maximum which we can get. So the following is a good frequency voltage curve. You can save your frequency voltage curve by clicking here and selecting the profile where you want to put it, and you click here, it will be saved. Now if you want this to run at starter first, you have to click over here, start with Windows, start minimized, and click OK, and click on this. It will automatically apply the profile when the PC boots up. Now as we want this to run in the beginning, not the MSI Afterburner, because once you apply this, the curve has gone to the stock. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to induce a delay. First I will go where MSI Afterburner has been installed, config file, over here I have set around value of 3000. This is the startup delay which I have kept, so that first over here this is GPU tweak applies its own limit, then MSI Afterburner applies the curve. These two make sure the GTX 1060 runs as cool as possible, and max temperature goes up to 85 degrees. And this is generally not the case. It happens only if you don't enable a frequency limiter, sorry, frame limiter, FPS limit. And this has been pretty common in laptops. Like, people suggest you use FPS limiter, but if you don't in competitive games, it's not an issue, because competitive games GPU is not much utilized, CPU is more utilized. Now what I have done is I have created two profiles. First is the performance profile. In performance profile, I have given the maximum temperature, so maximum frequency of 3 gigahertz. 3 gigahertz is the maximum frequency the CPU can go, and once it it reaches a certain value of temperature, it will automatically downclock it to a different profile which I have set over here. This is the battery profile. Over here I have set disabled the turbo and downclocked to 2.8 gigahertz. And according to my testing in various benchmarks and games, 3 gigahertz all core boost, in 3 gigahertz all core boost I have achieved maximum of the performance. If the temperature rises a lot, it goes back to 2.8, which is not so big a deal. This is only activated mostly in GPU intensive games, because once the GPU heats up, the CPU also heats up, because they share both the same heatsink. Now once we all put the pieces together, I'll show you once. First, MS afterburner curve, I have put mine to be this one. Next is the GPU tweak. Third is the throttle stop. In throttle stop, the steps are: first 100 volt, next downclock, next create another profile, disable the turbo or just downclock it to 2.8, the same all this. And also power limit your CPU. I suggest power limiting your CPU to 30 watts. 30 watts is more than enough to run your CPU at 3 gigahertz. Just save your profile. Even though it reaches its limits, it will just downclock it to a lower frequency, and that's all. It will not result in any crash. I have been using this laptop for a very long time, and have I have received crashes very less, and have been playing many of the games, and have been getting performance greater than which what I used to get before. So thank you for watching the video. Thank you. I also suggest maxing out your fans whenever you game, because your GPU and CPU work a lot during that time, and overheating is normal during gaming. So maxing out your fans is kind of necessary whenever you game. So depending upon you what type of game you run, you can set your fans to a particular RPM depending upon your laptop manufacturer, or you can just max them out. Acer laptops come with a feature called Game Sync, where you can just set a profile for each and every game and what type of control you want to give. But with maxing out fans comes noise, so keep that in mind. To enable ASUS GPU tweak to run when you boot up your PC, click on settings, and over here You can enable automatically start GPU tweak when you log in and minimize it when it starts. And I suggest not to use this monitor because it's broken. Thank you. And apply these settings. And apply settings each time GPU tweak 2 starts. And no, it's mandatory to click on this. Click apply.